tenho colaborado com o Francisco, nomeadamente no VC IT, ajudando a alguma da parte internacional, identificando alguns exemplos de oradores estrangeiros para que possam vir, e mais uma vez sugeriu o Dr. Palikaras, e assim o Francisco pediu para o apresentar. Antes disso, gostava de dizer outra coisa também, já agora, que estou aqui a dizer que eu vivo fora há muito tempo, sou português, vivo fora há muito tempo, e por acaso nunca me identifiquei muito com esta palavra do imigrante, não sei porquê, temos sempre esta ideia, ou eu pelo menos tenho a ideia que o imigrante eram estas pessoas sem dinheiro que saíam do país para ir trabalhar como taxistas em França, ou uma coisa assim, que também são muito importantes para a economia, mas eu penso que hoje em dia, principalmente para a minha geração, eu acho que já não existe tanto esse imigrante, temos que ver mais o mundo como um mundo global, as oportunidades globais, e eu penso que, por exemplo, sinto que gosto até talvez mais do meu país por estar fora do que se estivesse dentro, e até nesse sentido mais que o Dr. José Figueiredo, não quero que Portugal chegue à final, quero que Portugal ganhe a final.
Falta de ambição dele, falta de ambição.
É falta de ambição.
Eu não disse que não queria que Portugal... Eu não disse que não queria que Portugal porque ele não ganhasse a final. Eu quero que ele chegue à final porque assim vou aqui agora para ver se algo que quer ser simpático.
Exatamente.
Chegar à final é ótimo.
Neste sentido, então, passo sem demora a apresentar o Dr. Palikaras e porquê que eu sugeri ao Francisco que ele fosse um orador para vir aqui falar connosco. O George é grego, portanto, e ele até me disse que nós estamos agora na vingança dos pigs. Portanto, ouvimos muito que nós somos os pigs e que temos de fazer a vingança dos pigs, não só no futebol, em que a Grécia e Portugal passaram grupos improváveis, mas também em empreendedorismo, na criação de empresas e na contribuição para sairmos desta crise e para criarmos novas oportunidades. O George está desde há 15 anos em Inglaterra também, saiu da Grécia para ir, não para fugir, não porque não tinha dinheiro, mas para ir à procura da excelência no seu setor, como muitas pessoas da nossa geração fizeram. Mas continua a dar muito volta, e eu penso que é isso que é interessante. Ele é, por exemplo, não que isto seja um fórum político, mas ele é, por exemplo, o presidente do Partido Nova Democracia, que ganhou agora as eleições na Grécia. Ele é o presidente em Inglaterra desse partido. Um partido que está muito disposto a olhar para o empreendedorismo como forma de sair da crise, ao contrário dos outros, com medidas mais radicais, que podem estar certas ou não é a minha opinião aqui. Mais do que isso, em termos de background, é um engenheiro, um cientista, doutorado em novas tecnologias, em novos materiais, e tem usado toda essa sua experiência para trazer essas tecnologias para o mercado, para criar estas gazelas que nós falamos. Claro, é importante ter as empresas mais pequenas, que fazem o grande foro de todo o tecido empresarial, mas criar estas gazelas. E tem trabalhado nos últimos anos, eu colaboro com ele também em certos pontos, para o desenvolvimento de duas empresas de alta tecnologia que, estando sediadas em Londres, que muitas vezes as pessoas dizem vocês estão sediados em Londres, isso é fantástico, estão no melhor sítio do mundo. Pois nós estamos, mas temos parceiros chineses, temos financiamento canadiano, temos investigação nos Estados Unidos, e é um bocadinho disso que o George vai falar, para não termos medo de esta ideia não da globalização, mas de poder ir global, ir à procura das oportunidades onde elas estão, mas não perdendo o sentido que os países individualmente são maus. E deixando-me disto, vou então passar ao George, ele é que é o orador, e para fazer a sua apresentação. Welcome, George.
Well, that was the longest introduction I have ever received. Thank you, Ricardo. So, bom dia. Obrigado pelo convite. Particularmente ao Dr. Francisco Baña. And I will change now to English. That's why maybe in the next trip I'll be a little more conversed. So I'd like to talk to you today about the age of what I call entrepreneurial renaissance. I believe that we are at the beginning of this idea, which I call entrepreneurial renaissance, which is, as you know, entrepreneurship has been around for many, many years, but it has never been accepted by the people as much as it is today around the world. So we are now at the stage of acceptance. People accept entrepreneurs. This is a huge step. There is a lot of evidence out there. And proof, first of all, that what I'm talking about, first of all, has transcended gender. We see a lot of women right now, entrepreneurs, leaders of the top companies, CEOs. They're changing the world. This was not, in the last 20 years, maybe this change has happened in the last 20 years. Women taking huge responsibility and moving forward huge companies into the 21st century. Secondly, there is a shift in the age range. So you see younger and younger entrepreneurs taking risks, venture capitals and angel investors taking the same risks with them and believing in their capabilities. And you see older corporate people that have been in the comfort zone of a corporation moving outside of that comfort zone and starting up businesses, consultancies, technology firms, and so on. And finally, entrepreneurship is happening in every part of the globe. And this is the most fundamental thing. You see entrepreneurship in Canada, US, India, China, anywhere you look, there is the rise of the entrepreneurship effort all around. Now, this global phenomenon has passed the 50% mark of job creations worldwide. So 50%, and it's on the rise, of jobs created are because of entrepreneurs. And we will see that happening, a lot more often, and the increase will be so significant that it is projected that entrepreneurs will be the class that will be able to reduce poverty, that's what we want, and generate growth. What I want to share with you in the next few slides is how entrepreneurship has worked for me so far, and share my personal example and hopefully motivate some of the younger guys and ladies here in the audience. And just to show you that, being Greek is not a disadvantage, even though some might think, but, we share common problems, and we are in the same situation, but, this is a global financial problem. It's not just Greece and Portugal. So I love this map. There's a map of USA, but it has different countries in there. You'll see Greece is very small down on the right-hand side. You have Canada, France, Israel. This is a map that shows that if you access the US market, then you can access easily these secondary markets, which are huge. So for me and my entrepreneurial journey, I start by founding a company in London, which I will explain a bit later on. And very early, I identified that the US is the key to all these other markets. And the Forbes magazine, Forbes, very recently wrote that we are all part of this global entrepreneurial class, which is an identity that has no borders, it has no nationalities, and it has no religion. That's a fact. So entrepreneurs are, in actuality, it's not a demographic, it is a demographic and not a geographic class. And what their great creations can bring to our world, it's unmeasurable. That's what we are here to do. Investors have to realize this, and they need a passport, what I say, to the present, so to join us. We have seen many efforts by the European Union. We have seen some very interesting presentations today by IBAN, and they have mentioned how angel investment works in Europe. I have also, seen some fantastic work through the Eureka project, and there has been some new effort to improve existing infrastructure in Europe, but it's very slow. And I'll mention that in the USA has a big advantage over us. They are early adopters of technology. They take, risks a lot more often than we do in Europe. The Chinese, they're investing, in a recent report, 3 times as much in European ideas. And they want our ideas. They want to bring them back to China. But are we partnering with them, or are they just, taking advantage of what we have? There is 2 sides of the globe, US and China, and we are in the middle, and we have to be competitive like they are. Well, I'll tell you about a story that, I was in China about a month ago, and I was there visiting, as part of the British government. There was a program for British companies that do medical devices, and we went to Beijing and Shanghai. It was a 10-day tour, and we were it was a conference, maybe similar to this, and in the audience there were hundreds of medical device manufacturers and pharma companies. And from the beginning, you saw there was a huge interest in what we did. They would invite us to their factories to check their infrastructure, and immediately they wanted us to put in proposals. The Chinese government has proposals like similar to grants, some on loans, and we did. After my trip there, I put in a €500,000 project on our side, using some UK funding. And on the equivalent side, the Chinese partner put in a €5 million project, which, the maximum was 30 million. In Europe, the maximum was 500K. So I'm just giving you some numbers to make some comparisons. But what I did see in China is that in the next 5 years, maybe a little more, maybe a little less, China will start producing high-quality products. We have, always thought that the Chinese, cheap made, everything's cheap. This is changing. They're investing in high tech. They're investing in high-quality products. And think about Korea a few years ago. Korea was making Hyundais, they still do, Kia Motors, etc. LG, you have numerous products out there. Who was buying those? It was, low quality. Now they're a household name. All the Korean products are middle-tier, respectable products. This is what China will be in the next 5 years. That's what I think. So it is important to look both east and west. We are in a strategic place to do that. The Chinese have a big difficulty getting their products to the US. We could be that link. And I'll explain how I have taken that forward. This is a bit more of a textbook approach. So this is everybody should be aware of this startup pyramid. Right at the bottom is the product market fit. And I can tell you that this is a race. So you want to get to the top of the pyramid as quickly as you can with the least amount of money spent, if that helps. So startups require a solid foundation, and that starts at the bottom. You need to test your product in the market before going up. Because as you go up, if your product is not solid enough, then you start losing a lot of money very quickly. So why is the US ahead? Because they have a fantastic solid base. They have a huge market to test their products extremely quickly. I'll tell you in reference to the gentleman earlier showing us how Portugal and biosensors and medical devices work. I'll tell you very simply that in the US, you can have thousands of clinical trials within a year. In my scenario, we will be conducting 10,000 clinical trials, 10,000 patients for one medical clinical trial per year. Whereas if I went to Canada or the UK, I would do maybe 1,000 if I was lucky. Of course, the cost is important, but just again to give you a comparison. So I guess this is a philosophical question. What do you need to succeed? Many people have their own ways. I'll tell you that I started with a very lean startup. So I didn't want to burn cash. I wanted to be there for the long game, trying to improve the value of the company and get to a point where we can then attract funding, which we did. The way that we would do that is we would get customers before making the product. So having an idea should be enough to go out to your customer and say, look, I have this idea. Would that work for you? Would you buy that? And if they said no, then you can go back with no cost, change, and do that over and over again. You have to speak to your customers. A lot of the time I see, I used to be in academia, professors really fighting for their ideas, but never ever having talked to the customer. That was like, right there. The moment they would go to the market, the idea was done. So it is very important. So then you need to make a demo, like your product, to sell it. This is another, crucial step. And then you have to move as fast as possible once you have your customers in place. And it's kind of that iterative process. This is a business plan process, but it works on multiple levels. And Mr. Vasco da Gama, it's a Portuguese explorer, a pioneer. And you see the trail that he did a long, long time ago. But what I was trying to say with this slide is that you need to identify your ecosystem, your business ecosystem. And it might not be in Portugal. It might not be in Europe. And that's where you need to really be out there and look at all the options. So I guess maybe I can introduce myself now. From my perspective, I'm a parallel entrepreneur. I'm not a serial entrepreneur. I have started a couple of businesses that have a relationship between each other. I used to be a scientist. I still consider myself a scientist, but I have now two hats, the business hat and the research hat. I used to work at Queen Mary University in London. I did a PhD in England in electromagnetics, and I worked in wearable medical healthcare electronics. And my PhD was in metamaterials, and metamaterials is a very exciting new technology that enables my company to do some interesting work and innovations. So I just show you a map down here that these are certain countries that we have approached and we have partners in. The message that I want to give you is that entrepreneurs take the path of the least resistance. And sometimes in Europe, there is a lot of politics, and it's very resistive. Dealing with governments is very resistive. It's not just Europe. I have been in Canada, similar problems. The US, it's slightly, easier. And then you have other countries like India and China that are super receptive if the technology is right. So what I do is disruptive technology, and The first company is called MediWiSe, which is a bioengineering company. We're developing novel wireless medical solutions, for example, implantable sensors, imaging, diagnostics, etc. And this started back when I was working for Queen Mary University. My wife actually developed breast cancer, and now she's very healthy. But that gave me a very big motivation to actually go out there and make something that can help people. The products, we are based in London. That's our headquarters. And we have research centers in Greece, in Canada, and soon we will have a shop set up, let's say, in China for manufacturing. We have a number of applications and know-how. We, like I said, a couple of them have been mentioned, but we also do tissue modeling and RFID systems, and we have processes for rapid prototyping and testing. A couple of products, and this is in collaboration with our Chinese partners. The first one is a hyperthermia the machine that heats up tumors to a certain degree. It is instead of machines that do, for example, chemotherapy or using radiation therapy to treat the cancer cells. This is a similar machine, but it has very low side effects. And the other one on the right is a new system that has chemohyperthermia. So you have a chemotherapy, it connects to the abdomen, and it circulates the chemical, but at the same time it heats up the chemical, and you have the maximum effect. Typically a radiotherapy or even chemotherapy would last for more than a month, and with this system you can do both chemotherapy and hyperthermia in less than 3 weeks. So it's a revolutionary system. These both systems are at the clinical trial stage, and we are working with Canadian, the Canadian Institute of Cancer and the US to actually put these on the US market first. And we also have R&D. We have ongoing research and development. We have okay, that passed through. But we have implantable sensors. So one of the sensors that we are developing is an implantable sensor. It is 1 by 1 millimeter. It's the smallest in the world. And it has a little battery. And what you do, the doctor will implant it after they remove the tumor. And it measures in real time a radiation received by the patient. So it is applied for breast cancer patients and prostate cancer patients. There is no method out there right now to measure in real time how much radiation is received. And radiation is very toxic to the body. It's very important to have that information. This is another system that does medical imaging. And medical imaging is very important to predict if and catch early any kind of tumor, and then you can go for your therapy. But this system is very different. Right now, women are not allowed, but it's not recommended for women below 40 to actually have a mammogram. There are many reasons. The first one is that the breast tissue is more dense. And because it's dense, it gives a lot of false positives. So a typical mammogram will show you tumors for younger women. And you would always have to go and do biopsies, and it's very painful. Not only psychologically, but also physically painful. What we are doing, and we are pioneering in this, is that we are bringing an imaging modality to younger ages, from 25 to 40, and bridging that gap. It's a big gap where there's no competition, and our modality will help women have more awareness. A third of women are not going for a mammogram because they heard about the painful experience from their friends. And what we are doing is we are bringing that AIDS group further low and improving on something that doesn't exist, and hopefully to capture more patients earlier and treat the cancer earlier. So I'm going to say something about global opportunities. I don't know if you're aware, but India has a very old medical regulation system. It's dated, I think, in the 50s. That means that if a company from Portugal wanted to develop a medical device, like the ones you mentioned earlier, they can enter the Indian market very quickly, because they're, it's not like the FDA in the US, which is very, very strict and has lots of regulations. The same thing can happen in the US, but in a more costly manner. But through the US, the benefit is that you can then enter, having the FDA approval, all the other markets that I showed in that map earlier. And finally, the collaboration with partners in Asia is very important, because there is a lot of politics involved in Asia, and you need partners locally to develop your ideas. Otherwise, it's a very long and painful road. So I guess that brings me to the second business, which is LambdaGuard, and I will speed up. I know it's time to break. LambdaGuard is an advanced materials and systems engineering. What it has in common is what I mentioned earlier, metamaterials. That's the underlying science. And how we can use that is to solve a very big problem, which is laser attacks against aeroplanes. Have you ever heard of this? Any hands showing? One? Okay. So in aviation, there is a huge increase, and this is the data here, of laser attacks in aviation. People using those laser pens, we saw them earlier somewhere, and they are trying to blind pilots. And what our company, LambdaGuard, has developed is a filter, and I'll go to the filter, that basically blocks these laser attacks while keeping the transparency high. So the product is right now in certification process. So hopefully within the next few months we will have the certification, and it will be placed in aircraft. And I guess I wanted to give you a closing summary that the world is very small, and if you want to succeed in a very competitive world, you have to really go to the markets that your business can flourish. So the message that I want to give you is that the future for me and my company is being in this global scene, and I think that Portuguese companies can really benefit by just exploring, like Vasco da Gama did a long time ago, what's out there. And that concludes. Obrigado.